It happens every year, without any prior notice. In Europe, South America, in far-off Asia, Canada, the US. Anti-Semitism, a phenomenon that is difficult to restrain. Hatred of Jews. This hatred has already led to satanic results. The Holocaust. Author and Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Peter Wiesel, Elie Wiesel's nephew, left Budapest because of anti-Semitism.
I don't feel comfortable here. I think all of Europe has a very strong rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. The shoes that are here represent when they threw Jews into the Danube, tying barbed wire around them. Nowadays, they put pigs' heads here and pigs' feet into the shoes without fear of retribution.
In Venezuela, there is scalding criticism of Jews. Growing manifestations of anti-Semitism are commonplace.
Constantemente en los medios de comunicación, sea televisión, en radio y en internet, están hablando muy mal de Israel y de los judíos. Mi convicción es que eso realmente viene como de línea gubernamental y va bajando hacia la población.
In France, too, manifestations of anti-Semitism are sprouting up all over. These are unacceptable.
Et ce sont des gamins qui s'amusaient d'une manière très violente à lancer des cailloux, des pierres très grosses à la maison. Une autre de mes filles a été attaquée dans la rue, en bas de chez nous. On l'a obligée de se mettre à genoux et de crier « Vive la Palestine », dire à ma fille qui un jour est venue vers moi en disant « Maman, j'aimerais bien ne plus être juive ».
Pelevris, a contemporary Greek writer and historian, wrote the book Jews, the Whole Truth. He was accused of anti-Semitism, but was exonerated in court. A Jewish lawyer who closely followed the case noted that anti-Semitism had penetrated everywhere.
This is something I find it really very representative of his book. The time has come to give the Jew the designation he deserves. What is he who tortures? What is he who shoots? What is he who murders women or unarmed people? What is he who rapes? What is he who wants to drink our blood? What is he who does all these together? He is the subhuman Jew.
Sharansky was a Soviet prisoner of Zion in the Soviet Union. Today, he's standing up to waves of anti-Semitism through every means at his disposal.
These are the faces of anti-Semitism today. We have to recognize them, we have to understand them, and we have to fight against this new anti-Semitism.
Wherever anti-Semitism begins to emerge, we must address it seriously and try to uproot it, for our sakes and for the good of humanity. Because you can identify how and where it begins, how it can end, we all know. This child who saw death in front of his eyes fled with his brother from the death camps. Later on, he stood before Jewish leaders and said,
"This child on the picture, that's me. You, leaders of Jews in diaspora, and all the communities that you represent, you have the chance, you have the opportunity, you are privileged to have the chance to come like the doves who feel that this is their home."
Scapegoating and stereotyping have long been at the heart of religious persecution, and some of its vilest forms have been in anti-Semitic words and acts. Since the turn of the millennium, there has been an increase in violence against Jews in Europe. Arson at Jewish schools, vandalism and desecration of synagogues and cemeteries. as well as attacks and verbal abuse of individuals. It goes without saying that we are all shamed by these incidents, but they are promoted by a small minority of extremists who do not represent the wider communities they claim to. These acts are offensive not just to Jews, but to all supporters of religious freedom and tolerance worldwide. I condemn all instances of violence and discrimination against individuals and groups because of their faith or belief, wherever they occur and whatever the religion of the individual or group concerned.
A few years before I became the world chairman of Keren Hayesod, I served as a minister in the Israeli government. On the day of swearing in to become a minister, my father, who is a Holocaust survivor, told me about his childhood. He told me how he saw his father being killed by the Germans, how he had to hide himself, to look for shelters for years. And he said, you know, as a child, I didn't have childhood. I couldn't imagine myself growing up, having a family, having a son. And if somebody would have told me that I'm going to have a son that will be a minister, and a minister in the Jewish state, I couldn't even imagine something like this being happening. And that was only 60 and something years ago, not too long. I truly believe that as long as the gates of Jerusalem are open, the gates of Auschwitz will remain closed. And this is what Keren Hayesod is all about.
Leading the fight against anti-Semitism, Jewish communities throughout the world must remember that there is one place that must be preserved like the apple of one's eye. There is one place where every Jew, in times of distress, can find a home and feel part of a real, warm and embracing family. The State of Israel.